like they used to. Can't place your bets on the 9 to 5. Things don't work like they used to. No, there's not enough to keep you alive.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Christian Reeve podcast. Today's guest is Professor Ailson de Moraes. He is a former tutor of mine many years ago. He travels all around the world teaching and inspiring people. And this is a show that I'd actually thought about having for quite a few years, and I finally got around to reaching out to Ailson. So welcome to the show. How you doing?
Thank you very much, Chris, if I can call you Chris. Yeah,
of course. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your invitation. Yeah, I'm doing very well. I'm very grateful, for my life.
I'm going to start this by saying, because I think in life there are like, whenever you look back at education, there are always certain people that you look back at for one reason or another. And when I was at university, I think you stood out to me quite a lot because I don't know how this is going to sound. It's just the honest truth, right? So the subjects you taught, maybe I wasn't the biggest fan of. I remember some of, it's just luck of the draw, really. But I would attend every single lecture because of the way you taught. So you could be sitting there talking about, like, I don't know, scheduling, and I would be fascinated. I think there was something about, I remember talking to other people on my course about it, and it was, I think there's like a energy that you have, or like I don't know, like you can tell that you enjoy what you're talking about, teaching people, the concept of teaching, I guess. So I wanted to kind of like jump into that first. How is that something that you've maintained over the years? Because obviously there are certain subjects you probably taught a million times to people all around the world. How do you stay motivated teaching these subjects?
I think there are many things I could say about this. Yeah, I think I'm going to start telling you about my backgrounds, a little bit, so you can understand, and everyone can understand basically why I am into teaching and why I try to motivate my students. I grew up in a very, very simple background. To be honest, family, very, very good family. However, I attend very simple schools. And I wasn't a very good student. I always have some difficulties in education. And then also perhaps because of my size or the way I was, apparently, I have ADHD. And then I was very much bullied by my colleagues and even the teachers at that time. We are talking about late 70s and 1980s back home in Brazil, basically. And so I school was very hard for me. And at a certain point, I decided, to stop education. Basically, when I was 19 years old, I was already working and full time, actually. And then I said to myself when I was 19 years old, I finished, my whole education, secondary school, in the evenings. And I said to myself, I will never, ever go back, into education again or into the classroom. And it took me quite a few years, to go back, because I basically, when I was 20 years old, then I decided, to immigrate, to Europe. First to Spain, then Portugal, then eventually to the UK. I never thought that I would stay in Europe. Many years just going around. I then met some very interesting people in Portugal, and especially in England, while I was learning English. I'm still learning, by the way. It's very hard actually. So, and then start reading some books, and eventually, decided, to go back to education. And my whole education, actually, from first degree up to doctorate level, done actually in the UK. So because of my background, and how hard education it was for me, always thought, no, if I become, a teacher, a lecturer, I would like, to be different, in the classroom. And you probably know, for this reason, I received many awards, actually teaching awards, and so on. And I never thought, and I can, I think I can say to you that I haven't received, these awards because of what I teach, but probably because of the way I explain things in a very practical way and try to understand everyone, in the classroom and outside of the classroom. So I know I'm going too far, here perhaps with with this answer, but it's just to let you know that, it was hard, for me, um, because always back in my mind, I remember some of my teachers, who were not very nice. Of course, this wasn't the university; this was a different time, but they were not really there to motivate us. And I have to say, even in my first degree, there was someone, one lecturer who wasn't very good. Um, Funny enough, later on, I met her and I passed and actually know her, even in terms of degrees and um, academic background and so on. And she was very proud of me. But then in the back of my mind, I thought, but you were the one, actually who demotivate me in the classroom. But sometimes actually you can use actually these experiences, to actually go further, because you tell yourself, that you can do, you can make it, basically. So yeah, so I try to understand. One very good, a very important point is also, Chris. I can say to you that I have had thousands of students. Yeah, and I have never seen one of my students as just a number, but as a person. And I know that universities in general, they look or they see students as numbers, basically. And I've never thought that we are not numbers, we are all different individuals with our own capacities. And I follow some of my previous students, so yeah.
I think as well, I don't know if you'd remember. I mean, it was a long time ago. I remember things like crazy. I was having a problem with a group project that I was working on your course, and I was like tearing my hair out. And I won't go into too many specifics because it's private. But what I will say is, I think it was like second year of university for me at that point. So I'd had some bad experiences with group projects. Wasn't the first time. But obviously the difference at university level is that it's independently led. So when you're working with other people and they're letting you down, it's like they're kind of sabotaging your education in a way.
Yes,
it's not like when you're at school and you can just be like, oh, if it fails, don't worry. Like, it's the teacher can see that. Like the teacher's kind of like, no, it's on you. That was my experience. But when I came to you with this, it was interesting because for two reasons. One, the advice you gave me, but then also the way in which you approached it. I think with other lecturers, if I'd have come with that problem, it would have been like, oh, okay, quick 2-minute chat, that's it. But you were like, hey, step in my office. Like, let's sit down, let's talk about it. I was like, wow, okay. And we sat and we spoke about it. And I think in the end, I took your advice and I ran with it, and I kind of just did my own thing, and it worked. But it was kind of like, okay. I mean, the only difference with that was that I kind of inherited this group project with these people, whereas normally you would choose reliable people. I think it's actually off the back of that, I had a friend on the course called Ivan, and we'd both had experiences of working with bad groups. And so him and I kind of made an alliance where we're like, anytime there's a group project, we're working together.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter if no one else bothers, at least we can split the load 50-50, and it worked.
Yes.
So, so that was a big lesson I remember learning. But I just thought that was quite a good way of approaching things, more personable, more old-fashioned. But that's kind of something that I feel like might be lacking sometimes in education these days, is that approach. I know there's thousands of students. You don't have the time to see everyone. But when someone does take the time to do that, it does mean a lot. I felt like on the whole that uni, Royal Holloway was fairly good at doing that. I'd had other similar personable conversations. I did notice in general university level, you do tend to have that more personal approach from a teacher-student perspective. But I don't know, as time goes on, I do think that the university experience changes a lot. And a lot of it comes down to whether teachers want to get involved or not. I'll share a final point before we move on that I relate to you a lot on the on your experiences of school. Unfortunately, I had a very similar experience. I never envisioned that I would kind of be somewhat bullied by a teacher. Like I thought that was insane. I was like, okay, this is a grown adult, and they are projecting. I remember there was one teacher I had in high school who used to talk about her failing marriage, and I was like, I don't think this is appropriate in maths class. Just. And we were failing, and she just kept talking about it, and I was like, okay. And she's lovely, but I just, But the teachers that were like that, they would push it onto you and say, okay, well, you're not applying yourself enough, or you're not thinking this way. And I would always be for a teenager, I think I was pretty transparent about the issues I had, which is, maybe I don't learn in this way. Maybe the way you're teaching it doesn't connect with me. And did I always voice it in the right way? Probably not, because I was a frustrated teenager. But I think part of being a teacher is recognizing how you have to adjust that approach each and every time. So with your teaching style, how did you kind of develop your approach? Was it kind of just looking at the mistakes of your teachers and kind of saying, all right, I'm just not going to do that? Or like, how did that come to be?
I think, I always use some examples. And one of my best examples is Ken Robinson. Unfortunately, he passed away. And if you, I don't know if you know him, but Ken Robinson talks about creativity. He wrote a few books. Actually, he's on TEDx or TED actually, and has, I think, 2 videos, 2 TED. Probably some of them were the most watched in the whole world, with over 50 million watchers, basically. And I have the opportunity actually to meet him also in London when I read his first book, basically. And then as I was reading his book and had the opportunity to meet him, not one-to-one, but basically, when he was speaking in London a few years before he passed away, unfortunately, quite young, actually, in his early 70s, I believe, or late 60s. While I was here reading, his book, I start, to think more carefully, about the education, basically, and how he actually developed himself, basically, and he has a fantastic story, coming from Liverpool, basically, grew up actually with some of the famous people, from Liverpool. And he was also not so good in education because he had, some issues, health issues. So I basically model or try, as much as possible, to model his style, and for me, he is, one of the greatest models in education for me. Yeah, he even became a sir, knighted by the Queen, and so on. But he's still a very, very humble man, actually. And when you read his his books, and you listen to him, you can see, how humble, he was. Even when I spoke to him in London, I asked him actually to sign one of his books, to my daughter, which I gave to her, and she really cherished, his thoughts as well, his ideas. And I could tell you more, of course, how I develop on myself, because obviously that once you are into this kind of system, you see a lot of not so good things, And by the way, I'm a very critical about the education system. Yeah, very critical. I don't, for example, I it's really frustrated when you see some academics, and they told me, some of them, told me, I'm not here, to meet students or to teach. I'm here to do research, and I don't care about the students. Literally, saying this, and I thought, why we're here then? You could be just, a research fellow somewhere else, and you don't need to teach.
I'll cut in there for a second and just add that, as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of the research-based unis make it a prerequisite that you have to teach as part of the setup, right? Which I say, in fairness, with certain people, maybe they're just not that way inclined. They're not teachers, I think to become a teacher, you do have to have like a certain. It's like you got to be good at, like, with people, talking in front of people, but I will say I did notice even on my course that there were a few people where it's fine if you're not comfortable, but when it's, as you say, kind of, I don't care and I'm going to make it known to you that I don't care, it's like, ooh, come on, man, we've both been in the same spot, this is costing us thousands, like, please try a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, of course, the system is like this, and difficult to change, again, if you read, what Ken Robinson say, he amazing, what he said, and from him actually I learned, some very interesting points related, to this kind of environment. But yeah, no, I think, you're right. There's no problem at all, of course, being a good researcher and so on. For example, I don't know if you know, but there are different, if I can say, approaches, for you to be in the academic environment. I, after a few years, I decided to focus on teaching, basically. So even though I was at Royal Holloway for a long time, actually, I left last year, after 20 years plus, I decided to leave. And I only teach postgrad and MBA in different places now. And so I decided, to go into the teaching path, basically. Yeah. Which is not very common. So I was teaching more hours than my colleagues, but then I didn't need, to do so much research. So only 10% of my time was focusing on research. And despite of only 10%, I was able to do, and still do actually, last year I published 2 books, basically, with one with some colleagues, one by myself. But yeah, I always consider myself a teacher. Literally, a teacher, and somehow a mentor, because I was able and still, do, have some students who come to talk to me about her professional life. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting that again, I remember when I was at uni, you were one of the teachers that was there often. And we were aware at the time that you were teaching in, say, Singapore or wherever else in the world you were. You'd be like, yeah, I'm flying off to here. And I'm like, that's crazy, man. Cool. But just what? One thing I do want to ask about, actually, is obviously you were at Royal Holloway for 20 years. What led for your decision to leave? Out of curiosity.
One of them is quite private, and I don't mind to share. I don't want to share,
Sure?
I turned 55. Yeah, no, okay. I'm fine. Yeah. I turned 55 last year. I'm 56 now. And, I don't look like?
No, you look great, man. Look good.
And so I knew that I could withdraw my private pension at the age of 55. And because I know how to do some investments, and I do investments, so I decided that, yeah, it is time to leave my full-time position. I do have 2 places where I teach today. I teach in China with UCL and Peking University, basically. And I teach in Finland, in Helsinki as well. So only MBA program, so I only teach for a few weeks, and then I focus on my own business now, basically. And here in Singapore, I taught with Royal Holloway, basically, for 10 years in Singapore, coming and go all the time. So I left because I could basically withdraw my some of my money, and then use my own money, do my own investments, because I believe I'm doing quite well, reasonable well at least. So but the other reason is quite controversial, because the system is changing a lot, and I wasn't very happy with the system. For example, at your time,
this would have been early or mid 2010s was when I was at Royal Holloway.
Yes.
Just for context.
Yeah, at that time, it was very different. I'm sure that you have had many exams. I believe so. This was middle 10, 15.
It's about 50-50 from what I remember. Like, what I remember was it was quite course. So I did a business management with marketing, specialized in marketing. So from what I remember, there was a lot of coursework, way too many group projects. Like, oh my God.
Yes.
And then, suddenly in third year, they ramped up with exams, but that was kind of a good thing. I think it was what ended up pushing it in favor for me to get my degree, because I had a lot of personal stuff at the time and I wasn't sure if I was going to get it. I literally got the degree whilst at work doing a split shift, and I was like over a counter looking at grades, trying to figure out this really confusing system they had. I was like, it's yes, 2-1. Woo! And my colleague was like, is that good? And I was like, I think so. Yes. But yeah, I remember it being quite heavy on exams in third year. And I did a lot of stuff I didn't do before, like taking over the library and writing down everything on whiteboards, trying to memorize stuff. But that was my experience. I don't know, maybe it was different for other people.
I think if you were in the university today, you would struggle much more because there is less exams and much more actually group work and assignments. And please don't get me wrong here. Yeah, I've never been so good in exams either. However, today there are many universities actually with literally nearly 0 exams. And when I compare and contrast, for example, my previous students who actually I still have contact. Some of them are my guest speakers actually, in my classes nowadays. From all over the world, some of them are doing extremely well, in their fields, or some of them, for example, they took over their own family business, and they internationalized, the family business and so on. Because you remember, we have students from all over the world at Royal Holloway, and that was actually one of the greatest aspects, of the university, especially Royal Holloway.
They always used to talk about global community or something.
Yes,
I remember them saying that.
Over 120 nationalities. Over 120 nationalities at Royal Holloway. We were the second most international university in the UK. So when I compare students from your time with this time, and this is one of my criticism about the university, is that we used to prepare you much better, for facing the challenge of the world. And I think with the exams, of course, we have AI today. It's much more difficult, to understand, but for example, here in Asia, it's still exams. Yeah. I know that we have differences, in terms of the academic system in Asia and in Europe, for example, or in the UK especially. But I think it's much more easy to get a degree nowadays, and I'm not very happy with that, because I think we should. Because my understanding is, in my own personal life, the more I push myself, the more successful I became. And I don't know.
I must say, I'll give you a quick cliff notes on what happened with me. So I did my degree. I had to move country because I couldn't find work. So I went to Estonia, lived there for 3 years, built a marketing career. Decided it wasn't for me, but I kept kind of working in that field. I did like freelancing and stuff like that. And basically I rediscovered creative stuff. So I do like acting and music and obviously podcasting, things like that. And so marketing has always been a part of all of that. Everything you do, it's marketing, sales, whatever, right? The presentation of things. But a big part of it all, what I've noticed, and that was something that was big at Royal Holloway, they used to kind of push on as well, is like networking and connecting with people. And to be honest, I think a degree now, I've always been pretty critical of degrees. I think if you're going to get a degree now, you've really got to sit and think, is this the right course for me? Is this the right path for me? There's several paths. A degree is one. A degree has its values, its access. I think accessibility to things is a big one. Like, for example, if you do a degree, it gets you access to scholarly articles and things like that you wouldn't otherwise have access to, or you'd have to pay a lot of money to get. There's also just the facilities themselves, which is quite useful over the course of however long you do a degree. But also that it depends where you are in the world. I can say in the UK, it's heavily saturated. 10 years ago, when I finished my degree, getting an undergraduate was like definite. You had to have a degree just to get an interview. Like, I want to be a receptionist, right? I have to have a degree. It was crazy. And then within about a year and a half, the job market changed completely.
Mm-hmm.
And now you didn't need to have a degree. It was an option, because it was like internships and apprenticeships and so on and so forth.
Yes.
Now it's masters. You have to have a master's to get a basic interview, right? Which is a lot. That you're saying 4 years of education. That's a lot of money as an investment. Yes, it's loan, but they do crazy stuff with the interest rates. Trust me. But it's a big commitment, and you think about it as well. It's from the age of 5 years old all the way up to, like, let's say 22, 23. Constant education, no breaks. They say, like a lot of people will take a gap year, say, between their degree and a master's, right? They're saying don't do that anymore because it's bad, and all the time counts. It'll put you. Basically, the point I'm trying to make is it's the competition level,
mm-hmm.
who you're competing with, and also just how many people are doing a degree now. I'll never forget in my third year, we had a lecturer teach us about consumer behavior. It was a great lecture. We had this guy who was he was like, if you've ever seen Black Books, the comedy series, it's a bit like that. It's like the character straight out of that. And he was kind of cheeky, but he was true to his subject. He was trying to kind of get us to think as from the perspective of, which is what I was always interested in when it came to business, was the psychology behind it. Why people buy what they buy. Why do they work in the way that they work, right? And what he was saying was that university is a business and we are the consumers. And he said, like, every time that Royal Holloway actually was really good for this. I don't know how it is now, but I remember, like, at the end of every term, we would fill out feedback forms about how the lectures were, how the subjects were. I always thought it was a bit strange. I thought it was cool. I think I did see some changes from, like, say, first year to third year. So they did actually listen. but there were like big things that like really needed to change and just didn't. Like I remembered, for example, one thing I always got frustrated with was like they were like, you have to attend all lectures, like you must attend. And I was always like, okay, well, this is independent study. How I choose to go about the degree is kind of up to me. If it's a seminar, that's different. I always said, like, and I say it to people now, like, go to all of your seminars, attend every seminar. You've got a dedicated PhD student in most cases, sometimes even the leader of the course, teaching you, working with you. You've got the benefit of other students. It's a good environment to kind of hash things out and figure out what you're learning. But the lectures, that's entirely dependent on who's leading the lectures. I enjoyed, for instance, lectures like yourself. There was a whole lecture series where we had guest lecturers. Some of them were a bit too heavy with the knowledge. In some cases, it was like, you know, a course book's worth of stuff in 1 hour, which is just it's too much. But the worst ones were the ones where someone would come in with a book they'd written, course book they'd written, and the accompanying PowerPoint behind them, and they would read from the book verbatim.
Yeah.
And so we would like, you know what? I remember at these 2 lessons in, there's one particular lecture I did in second year that was like this, and I was like, I'm just not going to go. I don't need to. I have the book. I'm familiar with a lot of what I'm reading here. It just seems like a waste of my time that I could use elsewhere. And obviously time and scheduling is everything at uni. And we started getting punished for it. They would turn around and they'd be like, you have to attend. If you don't attend, we're going to sanction you. You're going to be in trouble, this, that, and the other. And there was a bit of a rebellion in there in the end. And also because there were things like they would record the lectures, which was great, but then they would tell you had to go. So what's the point of recording them other than for, you know, for future analysis and stuff? But they were saying, oh, you're missing out on the experience, which is true for certain lecturers, but not true in others. And if they would sit in some of the lectures, they would see we weren't really missing out. It comes back to that investment thing, really, that we kind of touched on in the beginning. Like, some people were there to teach and inspire, and some people were there to just get the tick the boxes, so to speak.
Yeah.
So you got something to say?
Want to pick up on a couple of points. You know,
Sure. Yeah, go for it.
The first one, and it is related, you know, to the number of students in the class in the universities. Okay, if you compare and contrast the UK, and I'm sure the government doesn't like this, especially, you know, the Labour governments probably. But both of them, to be honest, you know, the Conservatives as well, you know. But remember that it was Tony Blair who started this, actually, you know, to say, no, everyone must have a degree, degrees. And totally nonsense, because if you compare and contrast the UK with Germany and Switzerland, let's pick, you know, the Switzerland. I know it's a different environment, but only 15% of the students attend, or the population actually attend universities in Switzerland. In comparison to the UK, is around 50%, which is over 3 times more. And we know that. Then it comes to my second point, which when you mentioned that, or your lecture, you know, one of my colleagues mentioned to you that you were a consumer in the university. And I remember when I said this, you know, also in to some of my colleagues, and some of them older than me, you know, or more experienced, said, no, we are not a business here. You know, this is an educational, you know, environment, and therefore they are not consumers. And I said, no, of course they are. They are paying for, you know, to be here. So back to my first point, I still believe, that's me, you don't need more than 20% of the population in university. The other interesting point, and this is related to me, which you also mentioned about the gap years. The students I have seen doing the gap years, yeah, either, for example, after the first degree, but I would encourage to do before, actually, not only 1 year, to be honest, because remember, I did 10 years of a gap time, and it was 2 years, I know, but I learned a lot working different places. For example, when I was looking your profile, basically your
LinkedIn.
profile, I checked there and I thought, yeah, this is great. So you have experience in different fields, and even you are not ashamed. To be honest, I'm gonna share here. You are not ashamed to say even very simple jobs you did before.
Yeah.
And I did the same. Yeah, and I did the same. Not exactly the same jobs, but I did very simple jobs when I was starting in the UK, and I never regret. Yeah, because yes, I didn't have a gap year, yeah, like some of the students, because I need to work, to make money to survive, basically. And then when I married, my daughter was born and so on. But I, definitely, still believe that I don't think a student, at the age of 19 or 20 years old is ready. Most of them are not ready for the university. And for example, I remember one of my students, maybe around your time, I can't remember his name, but I remember he came to university when he was 23, and he was working in real estate before. Real estate, in a estate agent, basically. He worked there for 3 years. Then he realized, to grow a bit and to make some more money, he would need, a degree. He did he was one of the best students. He did really well because he said to me, "I know what I'm here for." Yeah, I know exactly. And I remember he said to me, "I know exactly what I'm here for. So I'm gonna finish my degree." He finished when he was 27. And then he moved into finance, and he said, I know exactly, I need to make money. He was very driven by money, basically. And then he ended up, working finance, and then start developing his property portfolio. So basically he really wants to make money, and he knew that, I have some other examples, many other examples, but this reminds me that it's very important to have some experiences, and for example, today, if anyone would come to me and say, I'd like to do a degree at the age of 19 or 20 years old, the first thing I would say, honestly, don't do it. Yeah. First of all, get some experience. Maybe after 2 or 3 years, you can do a part-time degree. But then at the same time, I have my other point, which is, for example, related to my daughter. My daughter has ADHD, and very strong. And for her, it was very important to be in the university, and she did law. And now she moved completely. She's doing psychology. And actually, she's doing psychology because of her own conditions, to eventually, help someone or some people, at the same, with the same issues as she does. And for my surprise, last year, before she started, her degree in psychology, after finishing law, she decided to move to Brazil and study in a language which is not her first language, because her first language is English, and now she's studying in Portuguese. And for me, it was a surprise that she wants to move from the UK to Brazil, But anyway, point is here is that she did her degree in England, and for her it was very important to mature, to be more mature, basically. But yeah, university is not for everyone. It's okay, and we should understand that.
It's crazy to me as well, like how time flies. So that meeting that I mentioned earlier in the show, where I came into your office, but your daughter happened to be there at the time. I think
Really?
yeah, she just sat in the corner, and you were like, "Oh, by the way, it's my daughter." She's like playing on a like little games console or something.
Yes.
And I was like, I hope I'm not intruding. Oh my god.
Yeah.
You were like, yeah, that's fine. It's weird to think that she's now just like traveling the world, do degrees. It's just, wow, time flies. Okay, well, I'll throw I'll throw a curveball at you based on what you said, because I agree with you, but I'm also very conscious of what the world is like, what people are like. I mean, I will say this though, you're coming at it from the perspective of different parts of the world, which is completely valid, because I don't have much experience of that. All I can say is from the UK perspective, not doing a degree now is not necessarily a bad thing. Again, it depends on what your goal is, really. But doing things later in life, this is a thing I'm starting to notice. I'm 33 now, and I'm beginning to notice there's a little bit of ageism there. It's not massive, but I'm beginning to see it a little bit, right? You mentioned my experiences. So I've cultivated a life where my goal was get creative, to do creative stuff for a living. I'm still working on that goal. So things like voice acting, podcasting, stuff like that. We're not quite full time yet, but I've built up the experience, the equipment, etc. Always working at it. I've done some pretty incredible things over the years because of that. But the main thing I had to do was understand how these careers work, and how, because obviously when you go to university and you grow up in the UK, like typically you're just taught, 9 to 5, or, you do like rota work, that, that's it. That's all you can do. And no, there's like so many different ways you can do things. Like I learned in marketing, I come in every day in the office, I get my work done in 2 hours, and now I'm just sat bored wondering what to do. I figured out, I can just do this freelance and not work directly for a company, but work with them, charge them a higher rate, and do it whenever I feel like it. So I could do it at like 7 at night if I wanted to. Right? So that was something I figured out. And that, in acting, things like that, very much a similar thing. You're working project to project. The downside, obviously, being when you don't have work, you've got some tough months ahead of you. So that's something to keep in mind. But I've never understood the attitude when it comes to work, because I'm not ashamed of any job I've ever done. Like I've washed dishes for a living. I've worked in high sales and marketing jobs. I've been on set on films, TV shows. I've done music. I've done a little of everything. I've also been unemployed before. What I've noticed is the worst thing you can have is no job. That's number one. Not having any job sucks. It's the worst. I don't know how people can do it long term. Like I'd go nuts. The longest I was unemployed was during COVID. Like I came back from Europe, and I just sort of naively thought like, I'll just jump into a little marketing job or something, no problem. And like a year and a half later, like, okay. It's just, yeah. But that was COVID. Anyway, I digress. The point I'm trying to get to is, it's interesting, especially with the interviews I've had over the years, the different opportunities I've taken, the life I've cultivated for myself now, is people's attitudes towards, say, service work or different types of work that you do. For instance, I've gained so much from doing customer service work, and that helped, and events work, and that helped me in being a better public speaker, which has helped me with acting. If I'm on set, like I don't get shy. I'm not I'm just in the zone doing it, right? I remember when I was at uni, I was a student ambassador at one point, and we used to do open days and stuff like that. And you'd have I remember one time I walked in and there's at least 50 parents and kids, and I'm like, and I've got to talk to a room full of people. So I was in your position for once. I was like, wow. And I remembered being really nervous at the time, despite having been a musician and played on stage. It was like a totally different environment. Whereas you give that to me now, I don't even, I just grab the mic, start talking, tell stories. It's easy peasy. But that took years. And I think customer service, whatever you're doing in life, if you're ever shy about public speaking or being in front of people, work for 6 months in customer service and you'll never be shy again, because you have to go up and talk to people in person. Like it's like, go talk to that table, go serve at the bar here. Like it's crazy, man. I'm noticing that in general, the way that we look at experience is shifting, and things change now. Like my degree, I don't know if it really has much worth now, because I've not actively worked in marketing for some years. And that's another thing. You have to stay on top of things like all the time. If you're even out of the game for 6 months, it's like you're years behind, which is kind of scary. But that's just the UK though. The UK right now, job market is the worst it's been for years. And it's interesting that you said before about how we're phasing out exams and stuff like that. The argument was always, oh, well, exams are too hard. And also they're flawed because, and I do agree with this part, that they're flawed in the sense that the goal is more to remember as much as possible rather than learn and understand. But part of the test as well is retaining that information. And if you do, and if you've fully understood everything, you'll probably do all right in exams. And I remember lecturers like yourself really kind of, I was like giving clues per se, but it was like, because you weren't allowed to be like, oh, it's this, but you'd be like, I remember one teacher in particular being like, okay, so I think this might be something you might want to pay attention to. Just saying. I think this particular topic is something you might want to look at. And they wouldn't say, and like, some of it came up, some of it didn't. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I do dunk a lot on the younger generation because of what I see, who I've worked with. Obviously Gen Z is massively in university right now. But if they've gone to university, that suggests that they're not like most people you see in Gen Z, because they've committed 3 years to a degree. So that already says a lot about a person right there. But again, I remember people I went to university with that were just not committed at all. Like there was one guy, I was in third year and he repeated first year twice. And I remember thinking I think I might have even said to him, I was like, dude, like, what are you doing? Like
Yes.
you all you have to do is get a pass. It's first year, and then after that, that's when it matters. But I don't know. Okay, let's focus on that. Like, what are you seeing in the current generation of students that is different from previous generations?
Much information nowadays, and I feel sorry for this young generation. I can see my daughter. Yeah, she is much younger than you, but more or less, the same generation. Yeah.
Oh, was she like 24, something like that?
Yes,
so midway point.
Yeah. But like I said before, so Hannah, my daughter Hannah, she has ADHD. So psychologically, actually, her age is about 20 years old. So anyway. And mom is very, high level in terms of education as well. Dad is here, I can say that we are both quite intellectual, so she, we never push her in terms of do this or do that, we just let her be, and she, of course, we only have one daughter. She's in a very good position, in this case. So, but I feel very sorry because very competitive environments, technology, a lot of information for the students, for these, to decide what they want to be. One thing for or to study or basically to work on. First of all, I think we need to understand is that you study today something in university, you know that 1 year, 2 years, completely different. For example, the field where my wife was, she also decided to retire earlier recently. And in her field of biochemistry, for example, last few years she worked for Google, basically, in a very good position, actually, and literally, she's told me that, she said, oh, I feel sorry for the students who are doing PhDs in my field now because AI is doing most of the stuff, so these students are going to finish PhDs in very good places, and they are going to end up, working labs, basically, if they are able to get a job, because with AI, things are changing very, very drastically, And I think most universities, if you compare, actually, and that is interesting because when you compare the programs, for example, I know some universities, but okay, I'm gonna give numbers here, names. If you compare some of the master's program in places like UCL, for example, where I teach for them, in China, they are quite well advanced. They are already at the same level as these high places, but because they are in a very good position in the ranking and they have plenty of money, to invest, and their education, their degrees are very, very expensive as well. But when you compare to some of the other universities, for example, and I don't want to go into details on this, but my prediction is very soon you will see, many universities actually disappearing basically from the map. Some of them are already emerging. Some of them won't be able to survive in the UK. There are different reasons for that, but anyway, so we are going into a complete new age nowadays in the next few months, basically. And I feel for the students, because when you said, that for example, employment in the UK, when you look at the whole world is the same. For example, in China, there are millions of Chinese, who finish their degrees, even their masters, and they don't have a job. People look at China as one of the most relevant economies nowadays, second actually in the world. But there are millions of young people who are relying on their parents, finances, to keep going, basically. And it is a burn, it is hard, for the students. So, and then I'd like, I need to share this with you because when I was checking your profile, and you mentioned, to me some of your jobs, for example, someone like you, without trying to give you an advice here, but you are an entrepreneur. You are an entrepreneur. Yeah. And you are an entrepreneur. You are literally an entrepreneur who can survive in any direction, because you are not just in one field. You are in different fields. I think you are very creative as well. Yeah. From what I have seen. Yeah. You are very creative. So this is one of the most important soft skills that we need, and yes, you can do a lot of things with AI, but it's very interesting, this combination between the human side and the technology, side. So if you are onto AI, for example, you'll be fine. Okay. You'll be absolutely fine in the future, but many universities are actually behind. Even academics are behind, completely, very behind.
The
So
key,
it's hard.
I've been talking about AI for many years, way before anyone was really ever taking it seriously. I think the earliest conversations I was having about it were in 2020. I'll put a pin in that for a second and just say that when it comes to my experience, and if you've ever wondering like, why have I worked every job under the sun? It's not just necessity. Like right now, I do it for flexibility reasons. I've managed to cultivate a system where I can be free, say on a Monday when I please, kind of thing. Because I've chosen to go for these flexible jobs, casual jobs, stuff like that. I think people kind of look at that a bit as lunacy sometimes, because they're like, why wouldn't you do secure 9-to-5 income? And to be honest, there's a few reasons to that. One, your income is capped. I can earn more doing what I do than ever doing that. 2, flexibility of time. If you're locked into a schedule, say a 9 to 5, that's it. There's no maneuverability. Best of luck trying to get your boss to give you a day off when you want. It's not going to happen. And there are many options out there as far as flexibility of time and stuff. So that's a big reason. Another thing, though, is that anytime I've worked in a job, for example, my first proper job was working in a supermarket.
Mm-hmm.
And I remembered at the time I went part-time, and there was the opportunity to do overtime, to work in different departments. And people would ask me, like, do you want to work a shift here? And I remembered at the time thinking, oh, great, more hours. But then I also remembered thinking, this is an opportunity to learn. I can work on this counter. I can work in this checkout. I can do this, that, and the other. And that was a mindset that I've carried into every job I've ever done, which is always make yourself as employable as possible, have as much experience as possible. It's only ever, like, for instance, you're right. Like, I can always walk into a job. I was let go from a job in February, and I had an interview like a week or 2 later. And the only reason I didn't get the job was because there was an expert ahead of me, but they wanted me, but they went with this other guy. 2 months later, I get an email saying, oh, hey, this guy's left. Do you want to come? We really want you here. It's like, point being, like, and I work there now. It's great. It's awesome. I sell whiskey for a living. It's awesome. Yeah. It's awesome. Anyway, you make yourself as employable as possible. You learn as much as possible. You never stop making yourself as employable as possible. I agree with your sentiments about using AI. However, the big problem we have in society now is not so much just having AI. AI can be useful. I use it on this podcast for certain things. It's a great tool. The problem is people aren't using their brains anymore. It's like, oh, I'm just gonna, and those jokes when Elon Musk brought out his chip thing, that Neuralink or whatever it is, and they were like, oh, you can just divert to Google, don't have to think, right? There was jokes about that. But now it's becoming a reality where people don't think, they just go, oh, I'll just ask ChatGPT. And if you apply that to a university setting, there's different issues. Like, when I was at uni, the worst problem we had was, amongst others, was you put an essay through the Turnitin system, which is like a platform that analyzes if you've plagiarized your work. And the problem that we always had with it was that it would pick up stuff that was similar, and there would always be similarities because everyone's using the same journal articles and shit. So of course, there's only so many ways you can reword the same thing. But you'd probably be right, as long as it wasn't, I think it was like 50 or over, and you're fine, something like that. But obviously now, everyone just uses AI to write their essays, which is insanity. But you also get this issue of the system thinking that you're using AI when you're not. So it will say, oh, you've plagiarized, you've used AI. And it's like, no, I haven't. And there's been some famous cases of this. I'm with you, man. I really feel for today's students, because you're not only competing against people, you're competing against computers now.
Of course.
And that's impossible.
Yeah. Well, can you see, actually, as a good teacher, I have my pen, my notes.
Man, I've got like a million notebooks. Same, always.
Some notes about what you said. I'd like, just to point this, what you said now. Imagine, we discussed before about exams and non-exams. Asian countries, Singapore, China, Japan, all these countries here, they still have exams, okay? 3-4 hours exams with the students. They allow students use to the AI, but not in the exam. I use with them actually in the classroom, but not in the exams. Imagine, a student in the UK, finishing a degree, for example, without any exams is very easy today, and very easy to manipulate the system using AI.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't want to to go into details here, but then yes, universities become business, really business, with so many students in the classroom, and they always come with this idea that they are saving jobs and so on. Saving jobs, academic jobs, by adding more and more students. For example, in the classroom, this is not true, okay? Because strategically, it's all about trying to survive in the system, basically. But okay, let me to something else. You mentioned about your job in supermarkets, okay? One of my first jobs in the UK, it was in the supermarkets.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
I'm grateful for that, but don't get me wrong, it was one of the worst jobs in my life. One of the best jobs I have had, in the UK. I remember in London, actually, on Oxford Street, it was working for Burger King. And the
Wow.
reason is because when you work at Burger King, you have to work in different positions. Like you said, you go around, to uh, inside, and they do this in purpose. Yeah, McDonald's is the same, because then you can cover anyone. If there is someone missing, you can go around, and I learned so much. I really didn't like very much to be around, doing the burgers, but at the same time, you become so quick, even in decision making, because you have to be there, and work, with so many people, especially in Oxford Street, where the store is always full of people, basically all customers. So yeah, this is my comparing contrast in terms of jobs. But yes, another point is people like you and me, probably, I think you will agree with me that we suffer a bit in the society because we become very critical. Okay. For example, because I did some cleaning jobs before, for example, when I go to a place and, for example, in a hotel like this, very nice, and if it's not well clean, I say, I know how to do this. Or for example, if I go to a restaurant and they don't serve me well, and I think, excuse me, I was a waiter before. This is not the service you're supposed to give me. But I'm always very friendly and nice, but I say, excuse me, so if I'm paying, I am the consumer now. I am the customer. So you have to, look after me. And of course, you go to different countries and there are different ways to approach, this basically. I have one more point, but I don't know
Yeah.
if you want to say something. Otherwise,
I was
I
just
have
going to
4 points here,
tag
actually.
onto it. I was going to
Ah,
tag onto what you just said, only just because it just came to mind.
yes.
Um, I do the same thing you do, especially in restaurants. If I'm like, oh, I've not gotten the starter within 20 minutes, I'm like, what kind of operation are we running here? Uh, but no,
Yes.
one thing I remember about that supermarket job that I did that I found weird, and I still find this weird. So they had paid cleaners. They weren't working, they were a separate company.
Mm-hmm.
And they come in the morning, that's stupid early, and no one would say hello to them.
Yes.
No one would say good morning, hello,
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
I a couple of weeks, and I was like, this is odd. So I started saying hello, good morning, how are you? Good. Within a couple of weeks, I speak to one guy, and he tells me he's also working as a security guard and all this other stuff, and like how much money he earns doing that. And this is just a side gig for him. And I'm like, oh wow. And then we got really chatty. People used to look at me sideways for doing that, like, oh, that's weird. Why are you talking to the cleaners? I'm like, what do you mean? Like, but that was my point. Was that mindset that, oh, well, they're just cleaners, and I'm like, no, they're people and they're doing a job.
Mm-hmm.
But
Well,
like,
Chris,
that's weird. It's
well,
weird.
let me
People think
tell
that
you
way.
something. Okay, I'll give you 2 examples. Okay, about this. I always taught my daughter. She's in a much better position than me. I come from a very simple background. Today, is totally different for her. But I always taught her to be very humble and simple in her life. And I remember at Heathrow Airport, one day we were flying, me and her, actually, to Brazil. And I said, today I'm going to teach you a lesson, another lesson.
Oh no.
And she said, well, she was a teenager. And she said, what do you mean, Dad? I said, just a second. let's go. You have been to the toilet. And I said, how was the toilet? Very clean, isn't it? Yes. Can you see that lady there? She's the cleaner. Let's go and talk to her. And so I went, to this lady and I said, I did this many times by myself. In fact, yesterday I did it here. Actually, I am at a beautiful marina, here in Sentosa in Singapore. And I did exactly the same with a couple of cleaners. And they were quite surprised that I came to them. The same happened with this lady at the Heathrow Airport. And I said, I'd like to thank you. And she was quite surprised because they tend to be, most people don't see them. And then I said to my daughter, you see, Daddy has done this job before, and it's very important to respect everyone. Today, I am in a different position, and this lady here, she's doing a great job. And the lady was quite happy, and she smiled, to us. And this is, I think it's very important, to respect each other, because in the end of the day, we are all the same. Yeah? Today I'm the customer here, but tomorrow you are my customer. I have to serve you. It doesn't matter. But Chris, I'd like to share with you 4 things.
Go for it, mate.
While you were talking, just before, you mentioned something that I like to say to you. You said to me, the worst thing is have no jobs. Yeah. A few minutes before, and I'd like to say to you that one of the worst things is not to have an income. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
And people like you have multiple incomes. Am I correct?
Yes, that's right.
So you are already, and I like this because I also have different multiple incomes. This is very important in our society. So having just one single job and rely, I have seen this even with people, with very high salaries, and then they buy a house, they buy a car, and suddenly, they are made redundant, and they are in a
right. Yeah.
The second thing, so in my opinion, you already have multiple incomes, which is great. Yeah. It's all about then, of course, how to use your incomes and those months where maybe or weeks, where you don't have any income. It's important, of course, to organize yourself. Second one is freedom. Yeah. And yesterday I was talking to my brother here, but I was talking over the phone, and I was by the marine, and I said, yeah, maybe I don't have, so many millions, but I have freedom, and it's great, to have freedom. And freedom is, you asked me before why I left the university. Another reason why I left, the full-time job was actually to have freedom, because I was able to organize myself with different and multiple incomes, from my other business. So I said, I want to have a bit more freedom in my life, Third one, you also have flexibility. Yeah. You are very flexible. Okay. So you, like I said to you, you will never be in a very difficult position. For example, if you move countries, and you will be able, to sort out yourself. And this reminds me, my psychologist, she said to me some time ago, she said, oh, Ailson, you can live anywhere in the world, anywhere in the world, you will be successful. And I said, well, why is that? Then she told me, and I said, yeah, because I'm very flexible. And also because I'm good with people, basically, And the fourth one,
I think that's the main thing with you. It's who you are.
So. The fourth point for you is to have a purpose in your life. For example, doing this podcast here, you never know who you're going to reach, outside there. And maybe just a few words from you and me here will change the life of someone. And I have many examples like that. I even met one of my previous students here who is in a good position here in Singapore, and the other day, and he said, "Oh, I remember what you said about life in your classroom." And I thought to myself, you probably don't remember what I taught you, but you do remember a few words I said in the classroom here in Singapore. And that's the difference, So have a purpose in your life, or different purposes. Actually, it's very important. So it's these are my 4 points. Okay, multiple incomes. Yes, you are right. You are in the right path. Freedom. Yes, you have freedom. Flexibility, no doubt. And I think you have very good purpose in your life.
So I'll jump on that back because I've got a few points. First being, do you know how many times over the years someone has turned around to me and said, you're taking too much of a risk? Don't you think you should go back to marketing? Don't you think you should go back to a full-time job? Wouldn't that be safer? There was one job I had when I was working in Europe. There was a guy who, he was like a really high up regional marketing manager, something like that. Mm-hmm. And he'd been at the company for 7 years. And he'd like literally built up everything that they've been doing over the past 7 years. Like he was integral in all of it. There was a bit of like silly politics, and basically he was passed over for a position he absolutely should have gotten, in favor of someone who, I don't know, from America or some BS like that. And he was like, "Really? You're not going to take me on? All right, I'm going to leave." And he left, and they let him go. And I remember thinking, this is crazy. You've lost so much. I remember for like months and months and months afterwards, there would be so many things where people would be trying to get access to things or trying to know about certain projects, and they couldn't because he had all the access, all the information, everything, and he just took that with him. It was gone, I've seen other people been fired after like 20 odd years. Loyalty just gone. Who cares? And as you laid out, that's a really important point. If you've not built up other revenue streams, or at least other options for you from an employment perspective, all it takes is just company goes bust, you lose a job, you get moved around, you say the wrong word in a meeting, you're gone. Yes. I never have that worry. Like when I got let go 2 months ago from a job, new manager comes in, starts messing everything up. It was frustrating, but I wasn't worried. I knew I would be fine because I had other forms of income, because it's not my first rodeo. And that's a big thing I've learned about life, is not just work, like jobs, but also using your income to make investments. I have investments too. And a lot of people don't think about passive income as a concept, your money, accumulating money, or, you actively taking a role in investments and making money on top of money that way, you really have to, especially as you get older, you're not going to be able to work forever. None of us know, touch wood, our health stays good, but you don't know. You just don't know what's around the corner. So it's so important to have that mindset. And that, if you want to call playing it safe, that's the way of playing it safe, if you like. I mean, there's nothing safe about life, but that's really important as a concept. And you talk about purpose. I just wanted to jump on that. When I started this show years ago, I didn't have a particular goal. I just knew I wanted to do a podcast. I've been listening to podcasts for probably over 10 years at that point. And I wanted to do a classic style show, not the nonsense you see online now, but like an actual deep dive podcast as it's intended to be. Talk radio, that kind of thing. And over the years, as I started to get more and more people on the show, I started to realize, as I told you in sort of before we came on, that it was about life lessons, hearing people's amazing stories and finding the inspiration from that. And it would often reignite something in me as well. Like sometimes I've done this show and it's been the worst time of my life. Not the show itself, but I've just been going through something. Other times I'll come on, I'm in a great mood. I've always walked away having got something from this show.
Mhm.
And it's because of meeting people like yourself and going over people's life stories, but also just the way that they approach things and often their resilience and stuff like that. You know, the human soul, the human spirit, etc.
Yeah, I think everyone is different. Of course, if you talk to my wife, for example, she would be telling you, you know, her background, very different than mine because she's actually from Portugal. So, study in very good schools and in a totally different environment. But I like, to pick on the points, two points, here. One is you said before, you work for a company, for many years, and suddenly they just kick you out. And basically, I learned this from a professor from Royal Holloway, who actually also passed away a few years ago,
Oh,
unfortunately. And he said to me, look after yourself, Ailson. This was many years ago, over 20 years ago. In fact, not 20 years ago, but yeah, about 15 years ago. And he said to me, look after yourself. He said, because organizations, when they want you, they will keep you. When they don't want you, they don't care if you have a family, or they don't care. They will basically make you redundant. They will fire you at any time. This is why it's important to have different incomes and so on, and organize ourselves. I have to tell you that I was made redundant once, and it was the best thing in my life. I was just around 20 years old when I then decided to travel in Europe. I never left the country because I was in need of money or anything. I came from a very simple background, but I was doing well. I was working and study a little bit here and there, like I said to you before. But when it was hard, when you are made redundant. But then I took the risk, and you mentioned about risk before as well. And if I didn't take this risk, to after being made redundant and to travel to Europe, I wouldn't be here actually talking with you. And I always took some risks. And of course, now in my 50s, I need to be a bit more careful. Um, and yeah, I think, sometimes, when I go back and I think, wow, I going to Europe without knowing anyone, and only at that time with 450 American dollars in my pocket, no credit cards, no health insurance, nothing, only that and zero. I didn't know anyone. And I'm very proud to say I'm a self-made, basically, in many ways. Uh, I, I will always be very grateful, by the way, to the British government, to allow me to become British one day. And this was many years ago. I was very happy and to have all the opportunities to study, to work there, to buy properties and all these. And I will always be. In fact, my home country is Brazil, but in my soul, actually, it's England. Basically, every time I go back to England, I still have some things there, and I do the business with the universities. And every time I go back, I feel home. This is my home, really, actually. So we will always be grateful. But because I took the risk, basically, to learn the language and to move, and yeah, so I think it's very important to take risks nowadays. Of course, then people say, oh, you need to be careful with type of risk. But when you are young, for example, even in your age, you still can take some risks, because, one thing for sure is don't rely fully on a government pension or anything, because this is going to be more and more difficult in the next few years, for any government, basically. So take the risks and move on, make the best of your life, because in the end of the day, we live here, in a very short period of time, in this planet, and sometimes I think to myself, I said, wow, in 14 years, I'm 70. And what do I want, to say to myself, and what kind of legacy I want to leave behind, when I am there in my 70s, hopefully, to get there. But then in the end, life is very short, so we should actually teach more, kids, to take risks, even in the classroom, and in the education system.
I think it's a mindset. I think both you and I know that we are that type of person. And I think I'd be right in assuming, because I feel the same way, that with many of those risks, we didn't see it as a risk at the time. It was just like, well, this makes sense, so let's just go for it. And you don't see it in those terms, but then you explain it to other people, and they're like, "What? That's crazy! Have you not thought about this, 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 this?" And like, yeah, there are concerns, there are points of concern, but at the end of the day, if you live your life walking around being scared of your own shadow, then you'll never do anything.
Yes.
Simply put,
I think, I like to share this one with you. I have a good friend in Brazil. We grew up together, and I was able to help him to get a job in the same company which made me redundant 4 years later.
Amazing.
We were quite young at that time. I was 15 years old, working already full time, and today is different. I won't regret to have started, working very early in my life full time. And can you believe he's still in the same company? This is 41 years ago. 41 years ago. And the guy is still working the same company. He has never prepared a CV in his life. He's 1 year older than me. I work in so many places, and here I am. And today he really admired me. He said, "Wow, look what you have done in your life." But perhaps because I was pushed, I was pushed. Like you said, maybe it wasn't a risk at that time, but I was pushed. Like, do something with your life. And so later on, I see, and the other day he was saying to me that he's going to retire, and I thought, gosh, 40 something years old in years, working the same company. He's doing well, financially, but I don't think it's just about finance, it's just about this amazing life that we can have, and live in this planet. For me, the planet is very small today, it's a village.
So I look at like I met the love of my life a couple of years ago, and it changed my perspective on things. And I think that the key thing that it changed was how I look at the future and how I plan. But it's not changed me. It's not changed how I take risks and stuff. I suppose a combination of age and that has made me kind of make more, let's say educated risks. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
But what I will say is that I look at the future now, and I look at decisions I make with her in mind, and I'm like, let's say I was going to like settle down, for argument's sake. Like, let's say I was going to get a 9 to 5, I probably wouldn't enjoy it, but if I was going to hang my hat on life right now and say, all right, well, I gave it my best shot and now I'm just sort of happy with this, I could then at least look back and go, right, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did, and it's not, don't get me wrong, it's not like a competition. It's not so you can flex or whatever. But it's what you have from that. So, being able to teach your kids something about life, having experience to draw from in times of need or worry or whatever, being able to kind of utilize this experience to help others, to contribute to whatever job, business you're working for. There's a lot of positives to taking risks in life. Whereas if you stay in the same position, the same job, same town, whatever, you're missing out. You're never going to grow. You're never going to experience everything there is about life, the good, bad, the ugly, like everything in between. Like, they always say like the hardest times in your life teach you the biggest lessons. And that's true. And, like I travel, as we know, it broadens the mind. It changes shifts the perspective. You realize the world is not so small. I will never understand people that don't apply themselves and just try. I think it comes from fear. I understand it. I'm not criticizing. I
Mm-hmm.
don't get it, because there's a whole world out there,
Mm-hmm.
and you're missing it. And I just feel like most people are going to regret that when time passes you by, and there's no more time left to try things. Like that's the biggest fear I have above all else, is the fear of regret. Like, that's why I throw myself into everything.
I think it's important to see that. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, 100%. Well, I said before, we are in this planet for a very short period of time. When you go into your 50s, you will see this. You will remember this. Maybe we
Okay.
can still keep in touch, and you
I'd
will
like
see
to.
that when you are in your 50s, then you realize that life is really, really short. Yeah. Um, so the more I couldn't agree with you more. For me, it's very hard, to see people who stay in the same place. Although I respect, of course, but in fact, I said also before, and I was very happy when my daughter came to me and said, "Daddy, I want to live in Brazil now for some time." And she was born in England, first language English, study there. She could be okay there, actually, but when she came to see, and I said, "Really, is that what you want?" And she said, "Dad, remember you were 20 years old when you start flying." And because I always say to her, "You are an eagle, yeah, you are an eagle. You have to fly high, no matter what you do in your life, even if you become a bus driver." I said, "You have to fly and do your best in whatever you do, in your life." And so she said, "Well, here I am, Dad, so I am a junior eagle, and I want to fly and to improve my Portuguese, and then, to start studying in Brazil." I said, "Okay, great. She has 3 nationalities, so am I. We can live in about 40 different countries, including Europe and Latin America, UK as well. But yeah, so I'm very happy, for her to do this. Obviously, that she's in a much more safe environment, because first of all, because she lives with my granny, with the her granny of my mom nowadays, for some time. She wants to be there because granny is getting very old, and she wants to have this time with her, which is also very nice of her to do this. Um, and she has daddy and mom, to look after her, financially. But despite of that, I think, she's just following, the path, of mom and dad, because mom was born also in Portugal, but then moved to England. He studied in England as well, and moved to Brazil, come back with me, and then etc. So yeah, life is great, when you enjoy these moments here. For example, in Singapore, I really like, when I meet, people from England, from other countries, doing business here and trying business. Very young, fellows sometimes study in England, then move here. Sometimes they change completely, their careers. I know a couple of them who study business and then they become English teachers, basically, in China, and I think, this is great. And at least for 1 or 2 years, for you to experience, the culture, the environment, and maybe, who knows, maybe some opportunities will come up, the same, happened with me, basically. These opportunities happen in different places, different countries. Yeah, so, but yeah, I agree with you. It's all about the mindsets. And I believe that you can develop, these mindsets. Nowadays it's much easier, actually, so why not,
You just have to open yourself up to possibilities. The best way I heard it explained was something very simple.
Mm.
There's one of my favorite TV shows called How I Met Your Mother. It's a great show. Lots of life lessons, lots of cool stuff in there. I recommend it. If you're in your 20s, 30s, watch that show. Well,
Yeah.
any age, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But there's a particular episode they're talking about when you're single and you want like a relationship, but you're not really making yourself open. And
Mhm.
this guy laments, like, "Well, what do you mean? Like, of course I'm open to it, etc." Like, And they said something like, "How many pillows do you own on your bed?" And he's like, one. And they're like, exactly. There's no space in your room for a partner. You should have 2 pillows. So there's
Yes.
space for someone.
Yes.
And it's just this little thing, like, if you look at your life, chances are you're preventing yourself from taking opportunities. You're preventing yourself from being in the mindset where things could happen. And it's not just about like saying yes, but it's also about being in a position where you're prepared to receive things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's a big lesson I've learned over the years, and I think that if ever there was a lesson to take away from this show, and also just any of my shows, it's take the risk, take the chance on yourself, because it will probably lead to something good.
Yeah, and I think another point to emphasize here is when you travel, when you meet different people and you work with different cultures, you realize actually that everyone, has, their own issues. I was talking to my wife the other day and I asked her, can you see, we have some friends here, in Singapore, and we'll talk about some of our private stuff, over dinner. I say, you see, we are here. We were in 4 of us, 2 couples, 4 of us from different countries. Yeah. Me, her, my wife, and the gentleman is from Germany and the lady is from Singapore, very good friends of mine. And we were discussing about our private stuff, some of the private stuff, and I said, you see, no matter which culture you are, we are humans, and it's so great, to realize, that, doesn't matter where you are, doesn't matter your gender, your background, your cultural background. For example, I think one of the greatest aspects of living in England, especially in London and around, it is, to have the opportunity to meet people from all over the world, and for me, to be honest, I don't want to go into this topic, but when people talk about immigration, I say, well, I am an immigrant, and I know some immigrants here in Asia. I know many immigrants in Brazil, also. Actually, Brazil is quite good, in receiving immigrants from many countries also throughout, the history of the country, especially since 19th century. And yeah, I mean, I know that we need some organization with that. For example, here in Singapore, they are quite organized in terms of that, small country and so on. But yeah, I mean, everyone is basically trying to survive, in this planet. And one thing also is, in the end of the day, we are all prisoners, within this planet. Yeah, we can't live outside of here yet. This is our home, and we are all the same. And doesn't matter, where you come from. We all have some problems, issues here, the family problems, and so on. And yeah, so I'm very happy, to have been able to go around and meet these kind of people from different backgrounds. But everything started in England. So for me, of course, everything will be, I will always actually be very grateful for the opportunity, to start, there. Well, it started in Brazil, of course, but then when I moved to Europe and then eventually to settle down in England, yeah. So, yeah, I hope I can, I hope, I don't think I can say hope, because I experienced this in my life, that I am making a difference in the life of many people. And I'm very proud of that, because they are also making a difference in my life by sharing their own stories, as well as you now, share your own personal stories and your life stories. Basically, yeah, this is what, in the end, yeah, this is all about life, and this is connected to the purpose. What's the purpose of you being in this planet? If it's not, basically serve each other, with whatever we can, in any position we are. Yeah.
So in this show, it's kind of gone how I thought it would go, which is that I've not even touched my question sheet over here, because I've just been deep diving with you, and it's been fantastic. So I'll since we're kind of winding into more kind of like philosophical stuff, we'll wind down to the end now, and I'll ask you some questions I ask everyone, and also just whatever comes up.
Mhm.
We've talked about teaching. We've talked about your passion for teaching. What has teaching taught you about life?
What has teaching taught me about life? Before you become a teacher, you are a student. And you will be, I learned, actually, I am a student for the rest of my life. The more knowledge I have from the areas like, and I enjoy, the more I want to be a student actually, in this planet, basically. And teaching told me that there will always, be someone to teach you wherever you are. If it's a cleaner, if it's a driver, if it's an executive, and I have the opportunity to meet many of them, if it's from a different culture. Yes, sometimes, for example, you are in certain areas of the world where you cannot discuss certain topics, but it's still, I think, teaching taught me how to be humble and to understand that we are always students and learning from each other.
And the interesting thing as well is like you can study a million degrees, you can jump into topics for years and years and years, dedicate yourself to it. But the life lessons seem to be the things that always kind of stick with us. I must have spent hours upon hours upon hours in your lectures, but all I really remember are the life lessons, the passion, you trying to get a bunch of people in their early 20s to care about just business. And it worked, people would show up just to hear you talk. I think that says a lot. All right, this is fun. What's the worst advice you've ever received?
The worst advice I have ever received. I'm not going to tell you who said this to me, but it was, don't take so much risk, in investing in real estate.
What?
And I invest in real estate in England, in Scotland, in Brazil, and I made some mistakes.
Sure.
But I've never regret, to have invested, and I still invest in this. This is actually I have a company registered in Brazil to do this for me. Very, just, not so much, but it does help me a lot. But I remember when someone said, don't take the risk, to invest in this because you're going to be into debts. Then I learned that if you know how to manage your debts, you will be absolutely fine. The problem, of course, I'm writing about this actually in a book now, totally different, in a very popular book, which I want to publish in Brazil, about finances and something else, which maybe I don't want to, again, go into this, but I'm writing a book about finances and God.
Wow. Interesting. Okay.
Yes. And I was told not to take the risks. And today, the same person said, wow, you made it. And it's good that you did it. So, yeah.
I just think that's crazy because, like, from an investment standpoint, real estate is the best thing you could ever be involved in. Owning land is like huge as far as like what you can do with it, how you can use it. I mean, don't get me wrong. If we're talking like property management, it can begin to like, so you invest in a house and there's a lot of repair works and maintenance and stuff like that. Yeah, it adds up. Obviously there's property taxes and the list goes on, but just as a concept, if you've got enough to be able to invest in real estate, I mean, I always think back to, have you ever seen the movie The Founder?
I don't think so. Oh, let me put
Great
it
movie, Michael Keaton. Basically, it's the story of McDonald's.
Oh,
And
yes, of course. Yes, yes, yes,
so
yes.
he plays Ray Kroc, who
Yeah,
famously came to the McDonald's brothers
yeah.
and proposed a deal, essentially, because he learned through a lawyer about franchising
Hmm.
and real estate. And this guy essentially said to him, in not so many words, no, 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 no. You don't want to be in the restaurant business. You want to be in the real estate business.
Yes.
And essentially what McDonald's did is they formed the McDonald's Corporation, and which is, I believe it might even be the world's biggest real estate company.
Yes.
Or
One of
well,
them.
one time it was, yeah.
Yes.
And they
But
built up this idea of like buying up land, leasing the
mm,
land to franchises, and then they would then build the restaurant business on top of that.
yeah,
The money's in
yeah, the biggest
the
building of McDonald's is actually real estate. But Chris, real estate is very conservative, especially nowadays. It's too conservative for some people. And of course, there are other ways, for you to invest your money, um, where you can make more money, perhaps, or lose everything. But to be honest, for me, it's not just about the money at all, but it is the fact that, for example, I have tenants, for example, in Brazil, and
okay.
the places I buy are for professionals, students, in very good areas of the city. And I'm so happy because I tend to make these places. I have to be very careful because usually I buy the places and say, oh, I like so much this, but it's not for me to live here. But then I make in such a way very comfortable, because I always say that the person who is living there is making me money, but it could be me, there. So I want the person to be as comfortable as I am there. And one of the greatest things for me is when someone lives in my place, is live in a place, for example, for 2 or 3 years, and then he or she come to me, or the couple come to me. I remember actually in England, a couple come to me and say, oh, thank you for, for taking us as tenants. After 3 years here, we were able now to save some money to buy our own place. And I said, yes, I was so happy. Someone else probably would say, oh gosh, now I have to find another tenant. No, for me, it's the opposite. It's like, yes, I was part of this process. The other thing is, when I deal with some of the estate agents, they put the price, up, and I say, no, I'm not here just to make money. First of all, I'd like to know the background of this person. Um, you know, you know what? Give them a 10% discount, a 15% discount. Why? Why should I give, the state agents, say, why should I give 10% discount? Because I want to give, I want this person to live comfortable, to be able to pay, for the rent, and live comfortable. So for me, it goes beyond of just making money. I feel I am making a difference in the life of some of these people. They need a place to live. And why should I just be there, to make money, but also, to serve, and this is one of the ways that I believe that business and capitalism, for example, that's another very big, point. Of course, there are different types of capitalist systems, but if you understand, how to be in a health capitalism, I know it's very hard, but I think, you are make a difference in the life of other people. In my case, I also have, at least 10% of my income I use for charities, and it's not much, but whatever I can, I do it. And I think, yeah, this is great. This is why for me, I do invest in some other things, but for me, real estate is not just about money. Yeah. Like I said, it is more about being in contact with some of these people and say, yes, I am part of the process of giving you a shelter somehow, and you pay and you help me here also financially, but together, we are helping each other basically.
What's the best advice you've ever received?
To develop myself by reading interesting books, watching interesting podcasts, documentaries, films, developing, in myself. And of course, when you are traveling and you are in these places here, for example, you are also developing yourself because you are not just, it's very difficult for me actually when people ask, are you in holidays? I say, I'm never, in fully holidays. I'm always learning, and so for me, it's not just holidays. So yeah, developing myself and understanding that I am in this planet, to make a difference in the life of people, every day in any possible way. Yes.
You've definitely done that, Ailson. What's the
Well,
biggest life lesson you've learned so far?
biggest life lesson, we are here in this planet for a very short period of time. We should not just enjoy our life, but understanding our purpose in this planet.
Nicely put. Thank you. Final question for you to round things off for today. Do you have any upcoming projects or final thoughts that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Yes, I am, in fact, working on this book. First, I'm going to launch in Portuguese. It's a very popular book. I already have everything set up, to work on this. I believe that this book will help, people who are in the context of Brazil and Latin America, because there are many people who believe, in, or are beliefs, who believe in something else, or God, or whatever you decide, to say it is. But they are living a very poor life mentally, because what I want to teach in this book, it is forget about everything you learn from religion, and I'm gonna try to share with you something else here related, to these gods, but which I believe, will make you to have a better life, as an individual in this planet. So this is the project, and it's like a hobby for me, and I'm looking forward, to complete, this, this book, basically.
Wish you the best of luck with it. Do we know roughly when we can see it released?
Well, in Portuguese, will be released
Portuguese.
this year, before by October in Portuguese. Hopefully, then in 2027, next year, I will be able, to launch in English.
Okay.
And even if you don't believe in what we call gods, because I have a different definition of what God is. The lessons are basically in this book is the lessons are basically, for you to understand, that this supposed to be God wants you to be health, body, mind, spirit, and also financially. Why not? Because when you are good, with your finances, you can help other people, as well.
Absolutely. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. I knew it was going to be good. Yeah, really, really thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. It's good to reconnect with you after all these years.
Thank you very much, Chris. Let me take a picture and put on our
Yeah, sure. We'll do it. We'll do it for
social media.
There we go.
Brilliant. Yeah. And so thank you very much, for having me here. Now I am actually, recording, 30 seconds here, and I wish you all the best for this.
Thank you, man. I appreciate your time, and I'll be looking forward to getting this released to all the listeners of the Christian Reeve podcast. I know that they're going to appreciate everything that we've spoken about today.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. And for all the listeners of the Christian Reeve podcast, I'll make sure to put Ailson's details in the links. below so you can check out everything there is to know about Ailson and go and inspire yourself. Thank you, as always, for listening to the Christian Reeve podcast. As always, be safe, be well, and I'll see you all in the next one.
Things don't work like they used to. Can't place your bets on the 9 to 5. Things don't work like they used to. No, that's not enough to keep you alive. Head in the